Well, it's happening again. The dreaded video interview is on the rise. If you're not familiar with these are also sometimes called one-way interviews. These are those interviews you'll occasionally get where basically you get a link to click, and then you click on the link and it records you answering questions. Typically, you'll get a little bit of a prep time for these. So sometimes you'll get the questions well in advance. More frequently, the screen will just display the question for you. Sometimes there's also an audio recording. Sometimes there's even a video recording of a person asking the question. Then there's a certain amount of time, or you can just hit record and begin answering the questions. The truth is, most candidates really hate this format, but employers like it because it's pretty easy to get through and it doesn't take nearly as much time on the part of the interviewers. So, what can you do if you have one of these? Well, start by trying to get as comfortable as you can with the technology. So, you can do a bunch of things. You can record yourself on Zoom or on Teams. Just practice talking to zero audience. And you can do regular interview prep things to get yourself kind of into the correct headspace for these. They feel really awkward, and that's the main challenge of these. It's just kind of getting over our own nerves and our own discomfort in this setting. So, really, what you'll want to do is pretend that you're having a conversation, if that helps, even though there's obviously no one on the other end. The nice thing is you do generally get that little buffer of time before you hop into answering these questions, but it's still going to feel really weird and awkward to you because it is so very unusual. So, like I said, hop onto a platform like Teams or Zoom. Do a quick recording or two of yourself answering some typical questions for interviews. There are also some online resources that you can use, which I will link in the description here. Those can be helpful just to get over the discomfort that most of us feel with the recording process. We're not really on camera all that often on camera, but this is a awkward sort of thing that a lot of us are going to need to get through in the state of the job market today. Now, the nice thing here is that most of the time in this format, you will both have an audio reading of the question as well as the written out question. And as I said, sometimes also a little recorded person asking it. So it's nice because you actually get that little buffer of time to think about your answer to the question, and you get it in a couple of formats. So if you're better, for instance, at auditory processing, you will hear that cue, which does make it a little bit easier. The real challenge of this is the awkwardness of being on camera. So, to get over some of those nerves, what you can do is focus a bit on something that isn't your image on the camera. You'll want to make sure you're in frame. That is a really important piece of it. It's not going to do you any favors if you have one of those situations where it's just like the top of your head or camera's kind of looking up your nose, whatever it is. So do make sure that you have the ability to be kind of in frame. They say that the ideal for being in frame is about two hands over the top of your head. That's enough of your torso that you read as a human being to anyone watching you. It's also not so far away that they're not able to see your face. We are cued to seeing faces. So once you've made sure that you are really in frame appropriately and there's nothing distracting going on behind you, that kind of thing, practice talking to a camera instead of to the screen. So, what you can do for that is, depending on where your camera is, you can actually stick a pair of googly eyes on it or just draw some eyeballs. And that's going to remind you to make eye contact with the camera instead of the screen. Here's the difference. So, I am now making eye contact with my camera, but you'll see if I look down here, it looks a little bit less like I'm looking at you, the viewer, right? Not a huge deal. This isn't enormously problematic, so don't freak yourself out. But what I like about the eye contact with the camera thing is that it lets people hyper focus on themselves a bit less. It feels so awkward to be on camera that we start really getting a little too overwhelmed by it. And so you'll potentially notice yourself starting to think, did I just make that face? Why did I make that face? Oh, my hair is weird. What is going on with my mouth? Don't let yourself go there. Instead, just again, look at your camera. That's going to help a lot. A couple other things you can do in this process is try to remember to smile. Part of that is just because if you smile on camera, you're going to read is a little bit more friendly. We certainly want that even in this very screening portion of your interview process. But the other thing, and this is true even of an interview that's on Zoom or Teams or whatever, when you smile, you're also cueing your brain that this isn't a situation that you need to be worried about. It's a nice little reminder because we go a little bit into fight, flight, or flee mode, fight, flight, or freeze, and we can get a little too in our heads about that. And the problem is that our bodies respond to emotional stress in much the same way as they respond to actual physical threats. So when you're in that headspace where you're really kind of tempted to fight or to flee or whatever, a lot of us on camera are simply going to freeze. So that little cue, everything's okay. It's okay. Nothing can hurt me now. We're good. That's going to calm your limbic system down just a little bit so that you can cue back into the process of the interview. With a lot of these one-way interviews, you're also going to keep the question prompts on the screen, but not always. So it's never a bad idea to have something to take notes with so you can jot the question down in case you get yourself a little confused midway through answering the question. This isn't something that you would probably need normally. But given the added stress of being kind of on camera and feeling really unfamiliar with this process, some of us will just get a little bit more anxious and need to remind ourselves a time or two of what the question is. So feel free just to jot it down at the sort of prep part of the question. You can just throw down a couple of keywords so that you remember. And then if you find yourself getting super nervous as you're answering the question, you can just glance down at your notes really quickly, look back up, and get yourself back on cue. It's often the case with these video interviews that you also have the option to fix something that was problematic. So it's nice because sometimes the recording won't work. Your internet will get glitchy. Some little piece of it will cut out partway through. So you generally can fix that issue, which is also comforting in case you get partway through a question, you think, what am I saying? This doesn't make any sense. Now, if there were another human being on the other end of this process, you could just say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I got all wrapped up in things. I went down this path that doesn't make sense. Let me start over. But you don't really want to do that when you're being recorded because it just doesn't feel quite the same without another person sort of in the room. So instead, what you'll want to do is just go re-record your answer to the question. So give yourself a moment or two just to take some nice deep cleansing breaths, to think through it, and then to answer the question a little bit more in a more focused way. If you find yourself getting super anxious in this process, it's okay. It's a normal thing that we all kind of do. What you'll want to do is just tap back into some super basic mindfulness techniques. So you'll feel your nerves start kind of up, 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 and you'll think, okay, you'll take a nice deep cleansing breath. You'll put your feet flat on the floor and you'll just think, I can feel my body in the chair. Everything's all right. Take a nice deep breath. And you can even do some intentional breathing if that helps any. So that's sort of inhaling for a count of 3 or 4 and exhaling for approximately twice as long. Obviously, if you're recording yourself as you're answering the questions, you don't want to do a ton of that, but you can do it as you're reading the questions and prepping. And you absolutely can do it very briefly if you're in the middle of a question and you find yourself getting a little bit panicky or distracted. Just kind of take a nice deep breath. Make these a tiny bit shorter than you would if you were trying to kind of relax yourself a little bit more. So just a really nice way to remind yourself that everything is safe, you're fine, this isn't as bad as it sounds. Really, though, the best help you're going to get from this is hopping onto a similar platform to the one you will be using with the video interview and just practicing through it. So click on the links here in the comments and in the description. Go through some practice. And you'll find that you get just a bit more comfortable each time you practice through this. And that means that once it's time for your actual one-way interview, you're going to feel so much better than a lot of your competitors that you're much more likely to do super well in the interview. So I hope that is helpful. Let me know if you have any questions about that. I will talk to you soon.